Welcome to the Reaching Up Podcast. I'm Ron Farris.
And I'm Daniel Locke.
And today our topic is gaslighting. Gaslighting. So
it's a buzzword right now. It's funny.
Tell me about it. So do you have a definition for us for gaslighting?
Yes. So gaslighting, as I see it, it's a form of psychological manipulation in which a person causes someone to doubt their perception, memory, or sanity, often to gain power or control.
Yes. And this term gaslighting is it's really pretty popular today. But I actually saw this. There was a 1944 film called Gaslight, and this and that was a remake of a 1938 play called Angel Street. But the term gaslighting actually comes from this 1944 film by that name. And in that film, this man tries to convince his wife, who is Ingrid Bergman, I think, that she's going insane so that he can steal all of her possessions. And it is an unnerving movie, I will say. I won't ever watch it again. But he turns on the lights in the attic to search for her jewelry, and then the gas lights downstairs go down. And she's noticing the gas lights going down, and he's telling her that it's not really happening and that it's all in her imagination. So he is basically lying to her about the reality that she's perceiving, and she begins to believe that she must be crazy.
Yeah.
And that she's imagining these things that are actually right in front of her.
Yeah.
And that is what gaslighting is. Now, gaslighting can manifest itself, what we call gaslighting nowadays, can manifest itself in various contexts, including romantic relationships, families, and in workplaces. And I can think of examples of it. In professional settings, it may involve undermining a colleague's credibility or shifting blame to avoid accountability. So this one is really easy to see when you think about it. You know, the somebody is underperforming or screwing something up at work, and they're blaming somebody else.
Yes.
Have you ever seen that?
Absolutely.
All right, they're gaslighting. But
Yes.
I would have never known that's what you would call that. I mean, I can think of names for it, but that's as good as any.
And it can be, I like how it can be straight up lying. It's denying facts. It can be twisting the truth, or making someone feel as if they are irrational or overly sensitive. I think that one's interesting. Like, it doesn't even, you can straight up lie about it and just try to be like, no, that's not, you didn't actually see that. I might not have a sibling who has did that. When they were younger, but,
you might or might not.
Might or might not have. I don't know. I don't know, maybe. But I think that was interesting, like twisting the truth. So not all untruth, just some truth. And then making someone feel like that's, I think that's where I see it. I'm like, that's it. It's when you're making someone feel as if they're irrational or overly sensitive. Wow, that's not that big a deal. Like, I don't know. You're trying to make someone feel crazy if they're not, just to either protect yourself, protect your reputation, something like that. You're trying to make someone think that they're not, what they're feeling is irrational, when a lot of times it's not. So some examples of this as they play out in the family, and this is according to psychology today. There's one that they call the double bind family. This is parents that send conflicting messages to the kids. And they put their kids in what they call a double blind. And so this is a lose-lose situation where parents basically might be saying, well, we understand that you're going through this, but then their actions say that they condemn what you've done. They disapprove. And they may say that they love you, but their actions don't comply. And so the child finds themselves totally confused as to what's going on. And that is a type of gaslighting. That is an example of how it can really play out in damaging ways, because the message to the child is, I can't trust people because they say something but that's not what they believe.
Yeah.
And the destruction of the ability to trust people is a damaging thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a serious issue. And then when they get to adulthood, it's difficult for them to trust other people or to feel safe in relationships because they're always waiting for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And that's an example of that, what they call the double blind. And then there's the unpredictable and unstable family. One day the parent allows you to go to your friend's house, and the next day they say that you don't need to be going to their house.
Yeah.
There's a double standard here. This quite frequently relates to mental health issues that the parents have. They don't understand what they're doing or the fact that they're hurting people. This is a problem that's common in households where there is substance abuse, and the parents are hot one day and cold the next, or manic one day or depressed the next. And the reality is that this does leave a mark on children, and it's a serious issue. But in those households, the message to the child is anything can happen, and things are just totally chaos.
Yeah.
And when they get into adulthood, then they do not have any clue about how to deal with other people. And they, again, have a low level of trust. They begin to be driven by their emotions, and they have a very hard time managing their own emotions because they were in such an unstable environment when they were developing their emotional system. Another example of this gaslighting played out in the family is the picture perfect family. So in this type of family, there's no room for mistakes or negative emotions or weakness. You got to perform.
Yeah.
I know lots of people who grew up in households like this. Only the ideal image is presented to the world, and everything else is, everything that's bad or true is brushed under the rug. You hear this over and over and over again. These parents place the achievement at the forefront, and the need to be admired and envied by others is sort of the driving value in that household. And these are they're more homes like this than there should be. The message to the child is that you should never make mistakes, and you can never make a mistake. Which means that when you make a mistake, what do? You hide it. You put yourself up as the perfect person on Facebook and Instagram, and you are and the residual effect of that is that nothing is ever good enough. You've always, whatever you've got, it's got to be better. That's a sad place to live.
And no matter how hard you work, it's still not enough.
That's right. That's right.
That's exhausting.
You're going to develop a low self-esteem because you can never attain to your own goals. You can never be that person you want to be. You remember in an episode, a few episodes back, we were talking about an uptick in surgeons saying that they're being hired by people to change their physical appearances to make them look more like their AI improved social media profiles. Wow. That's sad. But these people that grow up though in these households where there's a picture perfect family, they are unable to account for their flaws or their weaknesses, and they are going to eternally be struggling. They suppress and ignore their feelings because they don't know how important they are. They're highly critical of themselves and others. When they make mistakes, they just self-flagellate. And again, they never are satisfied with normal life. And these people end up a lot of times being abusers of substances and abusers of other people.
I think the other part of that is where they stress, they have super high anxiety for fear of making a mistake. Not even that they're making a mistake. They may be killing it. And if anyone else looks at it, they're like, man, they're killing it. They've got a great job, a great house, whatever else. And internally, they're just terrified of messing it up somehow or something, or not having enough.
Well, the more you got to lose. I mean, that's a curse of having a lot, is that you've got to
you got to do whatever you got to do to keep it.
Yeah. I like that. I'd like to go into a couple, if we could, of some examples of gaslighting, like conversationally, because that helps me to picture it, I guess. Of like what it looks like in a conversation, what kind of sentences to make you be like, yep, that's it. Because a lot of times you don't recognize it. You're like, no, that seems normal. But if it seems normal and then you think about it, you're like, hey, that's actually maybe not normal, right? A lot of times, anyway, that's how I see things. Anyway, the first one I want to think about is like, if you're having a conversation and then one person says, hey, that comment really hurt me. And then the gaslighter says, wow, you're so emotional. You can't take a joke. Okay, so you're dismissing that person that your comment hurt. So what are you doing? You are dismissing the feelings so that you don't have to take responsibility. Hey, you should have been able to take a joke. And then the person that's getting hurt by that's like, wait, should I have taken a joke? Should I have taken offense to that? Should I have those feelings? Let's go with the next one. Like, and then like, this one's I like this one. It's like, why did you lie to me? I'm like, well, if you weren't so suspicious all the time, I wouldn't feel like I have to lie to you.
Ooh.
So then what are you doing? You're the villain. You're like, you're the villain for, like, what even is that? No, that was their choice to tell you a lie. And then they're trying to manipulate the situation, make you seem crazy, make it seem logical or okay that they lied. And then the last one is like, I like this one. I was only trying to help. Instead of taking responsibility, say, well, I was just trying to help. After doing something manipulative or controlling, they spin it like a favor, wrapped it in concern, but it's delivered with guilt.
Yeah. So that's what I hear in all of those things is just an effort to basically spin the situation to make yourself look good, even though you may have just made a mistake or done something inappropriate.
Yeah.
So human beings actually do this stuff, you think?
I think some of them do. I don't know any of them. You know.
Oh man, so I guess the value in this podcast is if you hear any of these things that sound like something you're either doing or witnessing, then you may be experiencing gaslighting and you just didn't know it. But the most important question is, of course, what do you do when you see these things or you experience these things, or let's say you are a victim of this type of behavior? Because I think a number of people that are going to be in this situation are experiencing that in a very intimate relationship, like a marriage.
Yeah.
And that's a very delicate situation. If you have somebody who's doing this, I guess the question would be, what do you do? What do you do? And I guess there are two ways to handle a relationship. It's what you do and what you bring into the relationship, requesting that the other person do. Yeah. So I'd say the first thing that I would look at in a relationship where there's gaslighting would be to see if I am doing it first. Self-awareness. Yeah. Which is not automatic. A lot of us, I guess I shouldn't say things like that. I find that I am very, very vulnerable to not see something I am doing that is wrong or harmful. Yep. I have to consciously think about what I'm saying and how. And a lot of times I can't do that unless someone calls me out on it. Yeah. And that's regrettable. Yeah. I will say that's very painful. I don't recommend it as the way to grow. But it does mean a lot to me when someone that I'm in a relationship with loves me enough to have a difficult, awkward conversation with me and call me out. Yeah. I think that's an act of love. So that would go both ways. I think if I let's just say in my friendship with you, if you catch me gaslighting you, which I hope you haven't, because you'd probably call me out right here, right now. But
I would, 100%.
I know you would. Yeah. But if I'm in that theoretical, that hypothetical relationship with you, then I would want you to call me out on it. Yeah. But that also goes the other way. If I am in a loving and respectful relationship with you, then I should be willing to do the awkward thing the uncomfortable thing and called you out on it as well. Not in a sense of condemnation, but in a sense of love, of a respect for you as a human being, to try to help you, prune yourself to be a better person, because gaslighting is never a good idea. It's a deceptive practice at the end of the day. It's an abusive practice at the end of the day. And it's not something that we want to allow in our own lives, and it's not something we want to tolerate in relationships.
Yeah. So I think going back to it, I think I want to say, so then because you said it, we need to, if there's a calling it out, if we get called out, I think is how I'll ask this then. When someone's like, we'll go to you're too sensitive, because this is a good one. I would say it's in relationships a lot. When someone says, if someone says, hey, that comment hurt me. Mm-hmm. If I'm saying to you, hey, Ron, that comment hurt me, and you're like, Daniel, you're too sensitive. Okay. It wasn't even that hurtful. You can't take a joke. Mm-hmm. One response is I just go away thinking, okay, maybe I am too, whatever. But if I say, hey, it was actually very hurtful, and I think I don't know how to say that exactly, but just saying, hey, that really was hurtful, and I don't like how you're dismissing that it did affect me. And then I think I would say more times than not, the response, if you call someone out, is going to be, they'll probably get a little upset, maybe get a little upset. The hope is, if that's the case, you're like, hey, I did not mean to do that. I'm sorry about that. I kind of spoke and my tone was off, or, I didn't really say that loving. And so hopefully that's the response.
Well, I would say this, in the context of a male-to-male friendship, if we're both trying to be right all the time, then that conversation is not going to go well.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to say with any relationship, though. That's going to be the case.
So it helps if I am working on my own level of humility and my own expression of love and my selflessness. All these things, sort of work together. The better I'm doing in those areas, the more likely I am to handle that kind of conversation better. And I would hope that people listening to this podcast are in relationships that are healthy like that. But the reality is that there are a lot of people, and I see this a lot in marriages in particular. I've got a lot of friends who are struggling in their marriages, and I'm sorry to say I've got several friends who are struggling in their marriages. And gaslighting is a big element in it, because there is a lot of toxicity, as the clinicians would call it, going on, and these people have probably had 2 or 3 or more traumatic events that have brought them to the point to where they are almost going at each other to hurt or destroy one another. And in an intimate relationship like a marriage, man, that's a bad place to be. So I guess for the sake of people listening to this podcast, if I had to give the best answer I could about what to do about gaslighting, I would say, well, call a timeout and look at yourself very carefully first, and figure out, the way I've heard it put is, clean up your side of the street. It's probably not, if you're gaslighting, you're probably also engaging in some self-deception, some denial. You may have other behaviors that are negatively impacting that relationship. And it's usually not just one thing. Gaslighting is something you use to cover up something else a lot of times. The fact you've made a mistake, the fact that you're being called out and you don't want to admit that you made the mistake, that's when you employ gaslighting tactics. Yeah. So, question yourself if you're doing it yourself. Look at the other person that you're in the relationship with, because gaslighting doesn't happen unless you're in some kind of relationship. So, look at that other person, see if what you are doing in terms of respecting their needs and their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, their spiritual well-being, and then start with yourself.
And then that's the old saying, in the Bible, if you want to remove the speck in your brother's eye, you need to remove the beam that's in your own eye.
Yeah.
So it's always, in my way of seeing things, I always need to look in the mirror first and make sure that Ron is okay.
Yeah.
And then I might be qualified to work with a friend to try to help adjust that relationship to where it's more mutually respectful and more mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not in a good place myself, then the situation that I try to resolve with somebody else is probably not going to go very well.
Yeah.
And so now, one thing I will say about this gaslighting is that the victim of gaslighting are at and this is clinically proven, are at a much higher risk of anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. So if you are a parent, you especially need to be careful if you're dealing with your children or the people in your household, because you may be putting them at higher risk of mental struggle or even suicidal thoughts. No parent, I think, wants to be responsible for that, and you may be doing it just by employing this notion of gaslighting in your household.
I think that's interesting.
That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where it gets dead serious, because it is so easy to be warped for one reason or the other. Bad childhood, failure to mature, whatever. And have those flaws in yourself. It's another thing entirely to hurt or impair someone else's well-being because of that. And sadly, in most relationships, you can't be sick without making the people around you suffer. I mean, that's why we talk on this podcast so much about things that deal with emotional sobriety, if you will, is because, those things present in us can do great damage to other people. And the opposite is true. As we develop emotional sobriety that is a flourishing, good, positive thing, that has a positive effect on the people around us. And it manifests itself in every area of our life, not just in our personal life, in our intimate life, but in our friendships and in our involvement in our society or our culture, and in work, in the workplace, and in the groups where we exert influence. And it truly enables us to become leaders among our peers, because we just basically are living a good life.
So I think I want to give two. I don't know. I think some emotions or some words that we've talked about are going to be helpful in addressing this in ourselves, and I'd love for you to give maybe a couple. But as you were talking, I think the two that came up was like honesty and boundaries. Then with both of those, with addressing gaslighting, either ourselves or someone else, is honesty to say, hey, if someone calls you out about it, or if you hear yourself doing it sometimes, if you hear yourself trying to protect yourself and either twisting the truth, like doing literally what we talked about, that twisting the truth, trying to make somebody question their sanity, something like that. If you can catch yourself or you get called out with that, just being honest, saying, hey, yeah, I think I was actually scared because I really did mess up here, or I failed in this area, or yeah, how I said that to you was not nice, and I'm sorry for that. Because that's not easy, but that's helpful to say, hey, I did hurt you in that way. What I said was hurtful, and I didn't mean to, because I care about you, I value you, I love you, I don't want to do that. And then also being, I guess I'm trying to figure out where the boundaries is in that then, because if it's being done to you, to say, hey, you're actually wrong, because what you just said did hurt me.
That's right. You've breached a boundary immediately when you are dishonest with that person.
Yeah.
And in my view, you should always promptly admit it. When you are wrong, promptly admit it. That's the 10th step in the 12-step program is, when you are wrong, promptly admit it. You don't let it roll. You don't wait and see how it plays out. You start right then and you say, look, I'm sorry I said that. I shouldn't have said that. And I don't know if I wouldn't go so far. I don't know how much you want to educate this other person on your vices, but you could say, that is just gaslighting, and I should never do that.
What about the turntables? What about when the table is turned? What about when it's being done to you? What do you think is and give me a dialogue if you can of what it looks like if someone's gaslighting you and you know it, either you pick up on it or you realize you're like, hey, no, like what you're saying is not true and I don't appreciate you saying it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my desire is that we would have an honest relationship where we're able to just talk about hard things sometimes.
I think I would do exactly what we said earlier. I would, if it's a person that I mean, and I hope I'm not in a relationship with someone that I don't love. I mean, I really do believe that Christ's teachings on love apply to all of our relationships.
Yeah.
So if I am acting out of love, I think I would need to stop and call you out on it right then in a respectful, tactful way,
mm-hmm.
and have a conversation about it right then.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with it right then. Another thing I would do is I would encourage people who are victims of gaslighting to seek out friends or support groups that talk openly about these things, mm-hmm. and discuss different ways to handle it, because there's a lot of times there's more than one way to handle something like this, and you deal with other people who are dealing with it, and you'll learn something 9 times out of 10 that will make it easier for you to deal with it when it comes your way. And then another thing to keep in mind is to remember that this person that's doing this, they may be totally unaware that they're doing it.
Yeah.
Give them a benefit of the doubt. Again, acting out of
good
love.
intent.
Yeah, assume that they're not intending
Mm-hmm.
to do this, that it's just something they've learned, or it's something that's just seems natural. There are a lot of people who cannot admit that they're wrong. And I've been that person. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to say that most things I encounter in other people that I don't like, I have probably done it myself. That's the old saying, if you spot it, you got it, But, another solution for people who are dealing with gaslighting is to engage with a good therapist,
Mm-hmm.
process the situation and talk about your options on how to handle it. It may be that you need some very specialized advice or thought process, some thought given to how to deal with it, particularly if the person on the other side may have some serious issues that are being unaddressed.
Yeah.
And that sadly is true in a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people that have made it to adulthood are bent or broken. And it doesn't get straightened out in one conversation. A lot of times, the conversation where you're dealing with gaslighting may just be the tip of the iceberg and what the problems really are. And if you're in a loving relationship with that person, then you want them to be whole as a human being.
Yeah.
That's not a one and done conversation. Mm-hmm. That is something that's got to be really approached with great love and with great care, and probably over time.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if gaslighting comes up in a conversation, I would be inclined, if I recognize it, again, be self-aware, sensitive to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the person gaslighting me, if I love you at all, I think the loving thing to do would be to call you out on it, mm-hmm. and say, look, I don't know if you're doing this, but you're gaslighting. I think you're gaslighting me. This is what you said. Is this what you really meant to say? What did you mean by that? I mean, there's a way to have that conversation. Is it awkward? Yes. But is it important? Yes. Is it healthy to get these things out on the table and deal with them? Yes. You can't do that from a position of ignorance, though. You really need to understand. I think I need to understand, if I'm going to engage you in a conversation about whether what you're doing to me is gaslighting, I need to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And, this podcast gives you a start, but it's not the end all and be all. There's a lot of stuff out there to talk about in terms of gaslighting and how it manifests itself and the different motives and reasons that it occurs. I'm one of those people who prefers to understand the theory behind a thing before I try to, execute.
Yeah.
And not everybody's that way. A lot of people just try to work off emotions. That rarely works out well.
Yeah.
I think more deliberate, disciplined thought process is the better way to approach just about any problem, particularly problems in relationships.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that we're talking about, I don't know, I think what I was trying to figure out is I don't like uncomfortable conversations. So I'm like, well, how do we start this conversation with a way that won't make it go sideways? And there may not be a way if you got somebody who's volatile, but I don't know, I heard somebody say recently, like, if we don't have hard conversations, we are choosing short-term comfort for long-term dysfunction. So if we're choosing to not have this conversation, if we're like, hey, I just don't think it's worth it, like nothing is going to change if you don't bring it up. So they're going to continue to either willfully or unknowingly continue to hurt you, make you think you're crazy, make you think you're unreasonable when they're not. And there's a way you can have, I think there's a way we can have a good conversation that says, hey, I care about you and I know you care about me, but when you do this thing, it makes me not think that.
Yes.
It doesn't demonstrate that.
Yes.
And I think exactly and I think it's hard for us to be able to have that conversation without a support group, whatever that looks like. I'm a proponent of counseling. I think it's very helpful. But if you've got a good friend and you can bounce something off of and say, hey, this is what's going on. Tell me if there's a blind spot I'm not seeing. Tell me if I'm being unreasonable, but this is what's going on. This is how I see it. Do you see it differently?
Yeah.
And don't get someone who's gonna be like, yeah, man, you're always right. Do that. Like, they're a terrible person.
That can really do a lot of damage. Those people who, don't know what they're talking about.
That's why I'm saying it either needs to be
choose your friends carefully.
That's exactly right. It needs to be a good friend or someone who you're paying to be your friend.
Yep.
That's very educated and knows.
I used to resent the idea that I had to pay somebody to talk to, but now I really respect that because as long as that other person is in my opinion is certified in cognitive behavioral therapy, which I believe is probably in my mind one of the best approaches to therapy that exists in the world today, then I can trust that I'm going to get some very informative and helpful feedback. And I've proven that for several years now. And I often wonder why God just doesn't allow everyone to be born with a therapist. But anyway, so that's going to have to do it for this conversation about gaslighting. I don't have any clever jokes to throw at you on that one today, so I'll just wrap it up. So we want to thank you guys for listening in to Reaching Up Podcast. If you're listening in on YouTube, be sure and hit that like button, subscribe. We appreciate you subscribers. We're trying to work on getting you guys some additional content, some bonus content. So be sure and subscribe and like us as well. If you're listening on any of the audio services, iHeart, Apple, or Spotify, be sure and like us, leave us a comment. If you want to send us some detailed comments, be sure and do that. You can do that through any of the comments on any of the services. But if you want to send us something in detail, maybe send us an email at contact@reachinguppodcast.com. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.